Introduction. Time has a strange way of moving when you least expect it. For Allie Bloom, every second she lost, every choice she didn't understand, brought her here, back to a love that had waited for her across lifetimes, across realities. Time Flies is a story of longing, destiny, and the courage to rewrite your own path, even if the universe resists. Chapter 1. Dreams and Confessions. The cafe smelled of fresh espresso and vanilla pastries, a cozy bubble of warmth pressed against the damp chill of the early evening. Rain still clung to the windows, running down in crooked trails that distorted the neon glow outside. Beyond the glass, the city was a living thing. Horns honking, laughter echoing in alleyways, the soft splash of hurried footsteps on wet pavement. Inside, the world felt slower, softer, as though time itself had paused to let them breathe. Allie cupped her latte between both palms, absorbing its heat like a secret. She stirred it absent-mindedly, the tiny silver spoon clinking against porcelain in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Across the small wooden table, Keen was talking. Something about building shelves for his apartment, or maybe fixing the crooked door hinge he'd been ignoring for months. His words rolled over her like a tide she'd forgotten how to swim in. She wasn't really listening. Not tonight. Her gaze caught on the way his hands moved when he talked, broad palms, ink-stained fingers from hours spent sketching designs and brushstrokes, a faint scar across his knuckle from when he'd cut himself helping her move boxes last year. The curve of his smile when he made himself laugh. The way his eyes sparkled when he was excited about something, like flickers of sunlight on the surface of a dark lake. She wondered if he knew how dangerous it was, the way he existed so quietly in her heart. "You're distracted," Keen said at last, raising an eyebrow. His voice cut through the hum of low jazz and murmured conversations around them. Allie blinked, startled back to the present. "Am I?" She tried to smile, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Sorry. Just thinking." "About what?" he asked, leaning forward on his elbows. His tone wasn't teasing. It was curious, patient, like it always was with him. She hesitated. "I don't know. Life, I guess. Dreams." He nodded slowly, like he'd expected her to say that. "Dreams," he echoed, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "Yeah, we all have them." Allie tilted her head, studying him. There was something different about tonight. Maybe it was the rain, or the way the light fell across his face, sharpening the shadows. "What's yours?" she asked softly. He hesitated, fingers tapping on the table in a slow, thoughtful beat. "Honestly," he gave a small laugh, as if admitting something private. "I want a family. Something steady. Something happy." His eyes flicked up to hers, cautious, searching. "Growing up, well, it was chaotic. A lot of shouting. A lot of doors slamming. I just want peace." Ollie's chest ached. She'd always known Keen carried a quiet ache inside him, but hearing it out loud cracked something in her. "That's," she murmured, "kind of beautiful." He shrugged, smiling faintly, as though embarrassed by his own honesty. "Yours?" She took a deep breath, her eyes bright with hope and fire. "I want to be a superstar, on stage, performing, feeling the crowd, the music, the lights. I want to live a life that people remember. Not just a name in a yearbook, not just a face at a party. I want to feel alive." He nodded, not saying anything at first, but she knew he understood. He always did. Their dreams were different, but somehow intertwined. Two lines running parallel, close enough to touch, but never crossing. For a moment, silence settled between them, filled only by the hiss of the espresso machine and the soft patter of rain. Allie watched the condensation bead on her cup and wondered if he'd ever guess how often she dreamed of him, too. They laughed, joked, and shared more secrets over the next hour, their conversation flowing easily like a river they had navigated together for years. They spoke about childhood fears, old habits, future plans. Keen described the smell of oil paint and sawdust in his tiny apartment. Allie confessed the way her stomach twisted before every audition. And yet, there was something unsaid. Something that lingered in the spaces between words, hiding behind smiles and unfinished sentences. Allie didn't know it yet, but one mistake, one accident, would tear her from this world and hurl her into another. A future she couldn't imagine, a life she didn't recognize, and a choice she would never forget. Chapter 2. Shadows of Home. Ollie's apartment felt empty, though it wasn't. The walls seemed to echo with memories she didn't want to face. The raised voices, the slammed doors, the cold silences of a family that had never really belonged to her. The faint smell of bleach mixed with old wood lingered in the corners, and the hum of the refrigerator sounded unusually loud, as if mocking her solitude. Her father had left when she was just a baby, vanishing like smoke in the wind, leaving gaps in her life no apology or gift could ever fill. Her mother had moved on, building another family that didn't include her, leaving Allie always on the outskirts of her own story. Every visit home was a battle. Every word, every glance, a reminder of what she'd never had. That's why she always went to him. Keen. The one man who had been there through every heartbreak, every doubt, every failure. Patient, kind, unwavering. The one who always saw her. Not just her smile, not just her achievements, but her soul. They looked at each other differently than anyone else. Like twin flames, connected across time and space, even when nothing else made sense. "Hey," he said softly as she entered his small, cozy studio apartment. Warm lights spilled from the lamps, illuminating sketches scattered across the table and canvases leaning against the walls. The faint smell of paint and coffee mingled with the evening air. "You okay?" Allie sank into the couch, letting out a long breath that seemed to carry years of tension. Her hands curled into the fabric of her sweater. I don't know anymore. Everything feels like it's falling apart." Keen knelt in front of her, holding her hands gently, thumbs brushing over the backs like he could erase her worries with touch alone. "You're stronger than you think, Allie. And I'm here. Always." She studied him, searching his face for any trace of doubt, of faltering. There wasn't any. That certainty, the kind of unshakable belief in her that no one else had ever shown, was what made him different. What made him safe. "Keen, what if I fail? What if I can't be what I dreamed?" Her voice trembled, small and vulnerable, though she hated it. She hated that she could feel this much. "You won't," he said firmly, eyes locked on hers. "You're going to shine, Allie. I know it. I believe in you more than anyone in the world ever could." She wanted to believe him. More than anything. She wanted to hold on to the warmth in his voice, the steady pulse of his presence. For a moment, in that quiet apartment filled with sketches, soft music, and unspoken promises, she let herself believe it. She let herself imagine a future where the applause of the crowd wasn't just a dream, but a reality, and he was there, always there, cheering silently from the wings. But the world outside her little sanctuary was shifting. The accident was coming. One wrong step, one miscalculation, one moment of unthinking action, and the life she knew, her dreams, her friends, her very heart, would be ripped from her. A chill ran down her spine as she caught her reflection in the window. For a fleeting second, she saw more than her own face, a shadow stretching beyond the glass, something unfamiliar, something not quite hers. And when Allie woke up, it wouldn't be the world she remembered. It wouldn't be her apartment, her sketches, or even the smell of coffee and paint. It would be a life she didn't recognize, a life shaped by choices she hadn't made, and by time itself, bending in ways she couldn't yet understand. Chapter 3. Tomorrow's Shadow. Allie blinked against the sunlight streaming through the window. The room felt unfamiliar, too pristine, too bright, too perfect. Every surface gleamed. The scent of fresh linen mingled with faint hints of expensive cologne and a subtle floral perfume she didn't recognize. The soft hum of city traffic drifted through the glass balcony door, oddly distant, almost surreal. A soft pressure on her lips startled her awake. She bolted upright, heart hammering, confusion and shock colliding in a dizzying rush. Her eyes widened as she saw a man leaning over her, smiling warmly. "Good morning, superstar," he said gently, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her chest tightened. Her mind spun. The familiarity in his face should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Who are you?" she stammered, voice trembling. He chuckled, a calm, practiced warmth in his tone. "Relax, Allie. It's me. I'm your husband, Ethan." Husband? That word should have felt comforting, grounding, warm. But it didn't. Not really. Not while her heart still ached for someone else. The one person who had always truly seen her. What happened to Keen? She whispered, fear creeping along her spine. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly, confusion flashing for a fraction of a second before he masked it with a careful, practiced calm. Keen. Yes. My friend. Someone I knew. He's alive, right? Her voice shook with urgency, hope twisting with panic. He nodded, carefully measured. I believe so. But he's not part of this life, Allie. This is your world now. Her chest tightened, a vice of longing and frustration constricting her. She had achieved everything she had ever dreamed of, adored, praised, admired. Cameras flashed, fans cheered, the stage lights warmed her skin. She had fame, fortune, the kind of life she had imagined for years. And yet, the one person she truly wanted, her anchor, her constant, was still out there somewhere. Somewhere in another thread of time, Keen lived, oblivious to the fracture between their lives. The thought made her stomach twist. Ollie's hands clenched into fists beneath the silk sheets. She could embrace this world fully, allow herself to be swept up in the applause, the luxury, the perfection. But her heart screamed for something else, something real, something that fame could never replace. And deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore it. Keen was alive. That truth burned brighter than any spotlight, louder than any cheer. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to steady her racing mind. There had to be a way, a thread she could pull, a path she could take back to him. Somewhere in the space between this life and the one she'd lost, a bridge awaited. She didn't know how she'd find it, but one thing was certain. Her heart would not be silenced. Her love would not be denied. Allie drew a deep breath, feeling both fear and determination swirl inside her like a storm. This world was beautiful, yes, but it was incomplete, and she would do whatever it took to reclaim what truly belonged to her. Chapter 4. The Heart Remembers. The city sparkled beneath the morning sun, a mosaic of glass and steel reflecting gold and rose hues. But Allie felt a weight pressing on her chest that no sunlight could lift. Cameras flashed along the sidewalks, fans cheered from behind velvet ropes, and every magazine celebrated her as a rising superstar. Headlines screamed her name in bold. Allie Bloom, the new face of fame, from unknown to unforgettable. Yet the only name that haunted her mind was Keen. Her husband, Ethan, a famous actor with kind eyes and a steady, practiced smile, waited for her at breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the buttery scent of croissants on the polished marble counter. He poured her coffee carefully, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. "You've got a big day today, Allie," he said softly, his tone gentle, almost tender. "Interviews, rehearsals, and the gala tonight. Are you ready?" Allie nodded, but her gaze drifted out the window. Cars honked, taxis weaved through the morning traffic, and the city thrummed with life, a rhythm that felt distant, foreign. She remembered Keen's laugh, low and warm, the quiet patience in his eyes, the way he always seemed to understand her without needing explanations, even when she couldn't understand herself. Ethan noticed her distraction and tilted his head, a small frown creasing his forehead. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile, lips tight, heart heavy. "Yeah, just thinking about the past." He reached for her hand, fingers warm and steady, and gave a reassuring squeeze. "The past is gone. This is your life now." Her heart ached, a sharp pang she couldn't ignore. The past wasn't gone. Keen was alive. Somewhere out there, in another thread of this fractured timeline, he was living his life, laughing, dreaming, and perhaps wondering what might have been. The knowledge burned brighter than any spotlight, louder than the applause she'd grown accustomed to. That night, under the glittering chandeliers of the gala, Ollie's world felt surreal. The lights reflected like tiny stars on the polished marble floor. Fans cheered, cameras clicked, and every eye seemed to be on her, but every cheer felt hollow without Keen beside her. Every flash of a camera, every compliment, reminded her of what she truly longed for. And then she saw him. A man at the edge of the crowd, leaning slightly against a balcony railing, watching her with quiet intensity. Not Keen, not exactly, but the flicker of familiarity, the echo of a past connection, made her heart skip a beat. Her breath caught. Time, she realized, was a trickster. Her life had been rewritten, shaped by wishes and circumstances she hadn't fully understood. Yet even in a life she had dreamed of, the heart remembered. The mind could be fooled, the world could be rearranged, but the heart, it never forgot. Ollie's chest tightened as determination swelled inside her. Maybe, just maybe, the fractures of time could be mended. Maybe the heart's memories were stronger than fate. And maybe, if she dared to follow them, she could rewrite her life once more. Chapter 5, Fragments of Time. Allie stood backstage, her heart racing, not from the performance, but from the memory that had haunted her since she woke in this world. The scent of stage polish and lingering hairspray filled the cramped corridor, the hum of lights and distant applause vibrating through the floorboards beneath her feet. Technicians called last-minute cues in rapid-fire tones, and the occasional clang of a mic stand hitting the floor echoed faintly like an offbeat heartbeat. The roar of the crowd filled the arena, a tidal wave of sound, but all she could see was Keen's face in her mind. The quiet strength, the patient smile, the way he seemed to understand her without explanation. She had read about him somewhere. Old news clippings, scattered social media posts, glimpses of headlines that confirmed he was alive. But the timeline had shifted. Their worlds had diverged. And now, she had to navigate hers without losing herself. A soft voice whispered from behind the curtains. "You ready, superstar?" Ethan's hand brushed hers as he leaned close. His smile was calm, reassuring, the practiced warmth of someone who had memorized the art of comfort. But Allie flinched slightly, a pang of guilt mixing with longing. She didn't want to hurt him. He had been nothing but kind, protective, gentle, but her heart yearned for someone else entirely. "I'll be fine," she said, forcing herself to smile. The curtains parted, and the stage lights hit her, warm and dazzling, like sunlight breaking after a storm. The audience erupted, clapping, shouting her name, filling the space with a thunderous wave of admiration. For a brief moment, the weight lifted. She was Allie, the performer, the star. Every note, every movement, every cheer reminded her of the dream she had chased her entire life. Yet even in the spotlight, Keen anchored her. His laugh, his quiet patience, the way he always saw her. These memories wrapped around her heart like a tether she couldn't break. Fame could illuminate the world, but it could not warm the spaces between her and the one person she truly loved. Back in her dressing room after the performance, Allie allowed herself a quiet moment. She pulled out her phone, fingertips brushing the cool glass as she searched for him. Any clue, any sign that could bridge the impossible distance between them. There he was, somewhere in the city, living his quiet, steady life, unaware of the ripples between their worlds. Ollie's chest tightened. How could she reach him? How could she tell him what had happened? The accident, the fractured timeline, the life she had stolen from herself. She pressed her lips together, forcing herself to breathe through the ache in her chest. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Ethan peeked in, carrying a bottle of water and a small snack tray. "Big day tomorrow. Interviews, charity events. And the gala again. I thought you might want some rest," he said, his voice warm, the corners of his eyes crinkling with genuine concern. She nodded, hiding the trembling in her hands. "Yeah, rest sounds good." As the door clicked shut, Allie sank onto the edge of the plush dressing room chair. The superstar life was everything she had dreamed of, but it didn't feel like hers. Every accolade, every photo, every whispered compliment felt hollow without Keen beside her. Her heart had traveled through time, searching for something it had always known. And no amount of fame, money, or applause could replace the one person who had truly seen her, the one she could never forget. She closed her eyes, imagining him there, somewhere, waiting, steady, patient, the life she had left behind calling to her across the impossible threads of time. Chapter 6, Echoes of the Past. Allie returned not to the small, familiar house she once knew, but to a high-rise apartment Ethan now called home. Everything about it gleamed: polished floors, sleek furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was the kind of perfection the world admired, a life meticulously crafted to match the expectations of a superstar's husband. But to Allie, it felt cold, sterile, like wearing clothes that didn't belong to her. The leather sofa smelled faintly of expensive conditioner. The lighting was precise, almost clinical, and even the coffee cups were arranged in a way that screamed order over warmth. She ran her fingers along the edge of the countertop, feeling nothing. Nothing familiar. Nothing home. Later that night, she couldn't stop herself. She asked her driver to take her back to the neighborhood where she had grown up, where memories of laughter, scraped knees, and endless summers lived in the nooks of her mind. Her heart pounded as the car turned down the old street, each corner a ghost of a childhood she could barely touch. But the house she remembered was gone. In its place stood a sleek, renovated home, modern glass walls glowing with warm light. The garden where she and Keen had spent countless afternoons talking, drawing, and dreaming was replaced by trimmed hedges and a paved driveway. The swing set where they had dared each other to jump higher, where their laughter had once echoed through the air, was gone. Every trace of the past she had clung to seemed erased, swept away by the relentless march of time. Ollie's chest tightened. She had known things would be different, but standing there made the truth crash down harder. The world had moved on without her. Without them. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye, a small envelope tucked between the gate and the mailbox. It was yellowed at the edges, frayed as if it had been there for years, ignored or waiting patiently. Her breath hitched when she saw her name written across it in Keen's unmistakable handwriting. His letters leaned unevenly, some backwards, some crooked, a reflection of the dyslexia he had always battled. Though words never came easily to him on paper, she recognized the rhythm, the shape, the soul of his hand immediately. Hands trembling, she opened it under the dim glow of the streetlight. The paper crinkled softly, fragile, yet full of intent. Allie, I don't know how this happened, but I feel you're not where you belong. I'll find a way to meet you. Somehow, somewhen. Don't forget us. The spelling was flawed, the lines uneven, but to Allie, it was perfect. Every misspelled word, every crooked line, carried the weight of him, the real Keen, the boy who had always understood her without question. Tears blurred her vision, but she smiled through them. Somehow, despite the years, despite the fractured timeline and the life she had been pulled into, Keen had left her a message, waiting, patient, a tether across time itself. Time had bent, twisted, and stolen so much from her. But in that moment, Allie knew one thing with absolute certainty. Their bond wasn't gone. It was alive, hidden in the cracks of reality, whispering, calling her back to him. And she would answer. Chapter 7. The Man in the Crowd. The note stayed tucked against Ollie's heart, hidden deep inside her jacket pocket like a secret flame. She touched it often, tracing the uneven letters with her thumb, as if Keen's voice might echo back through the lines, whispering across the impossible distance that separated them. Each touch made her pulse quicken, a quiet ache beneath the brilliance of her superstar life. Days blurred together in a whirlwind of rehearsals, interviews, and appearances. The city lights and paparazzi flashes became a constant hum in her mind, a rhythm she could no longer separate from her heartbeat. Ethan was always by her side, smiling, supportive, careful. To the world, he was the perfect husband, polished, charming, untouchably composed. To Allie, he was kind, patient, almost comforting, but he was not Keen. Not the boy who had shared her childhood, her secrets, her dreams. One evening, at a glittering gala filled with crystal chandeliers, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the soft murmur of high society, Allie moved through the crowd with practiced grace. The sequins of her gown shimmered under the lights, reporters called her name, and cameras flashed in rapid succession. Yet all of it, every sound, every glance, every captured image, felt hollow. Her mind, her heart, wandered elsewhere. And then, she saw him. At the edge of the ballroom, half hidden in the shadows, stood a man who didn't belong. His suit was simple, understated, almost out of place among the glittering tuxedos and designer gowns. But it wasn't the clothes that caught her breath. It was his eyes. Familiar, warm, searching. The kind of look that could see her, not just her fame, not just the mask she wore for the world. Allie froze, her glass trembling in her hand. The crowd pressed around her, waves of laughter, music, and conversation threatening to sweep her away, but she couldn't look anywhere else. She blinked, terrified it was just her imagination, a trick played by exhaustion or longing. But when the man tilted his head, the corner of his mouth twitching in that particular way she knew by heart. Her chest tightened, her stomach fluttered, her pulse thundered. "Keen," she whispered, barely audible, a confession to the universe itself. She pushed through the throng of people, her heels clicking against the marble floor, heart hammering against her ribs. But when she reached the edge of the ballroom, he was gone, vanished into the shadows as if swallowed by time itself. Her pulse raced in her ears. Had it really been him? Or was time playing tricks again, teasing her with what could never be? Back in the car with Ethan, the city lights blurred past like streaks of gold and silver. She kept her gaze fixed on the streets rushing by, the world moving forward as if nothing had shifted. But she could still feel it, that undeniable pull, that certainty wrapped around her chest like a tether. Somewhere out there, Keen was alive. Not just a memory, not just a letter. Alive. And maybe, just maybe, still waiting for her. Her fingers brushed the note in her pocket, and for the first time since waking in this fractured world, hope flared like sunlight through clouds. She wouldn't stop searching. She couldn't. Not until the heart she remembered, and had always belonged to her, was back where it belonged. Chapter 8. A Shadow in the City. The city looked different at night when Allie wasn't under the spotlight. No cameras, no makeup, no dazzling gowns. Just her in a hoodie and cap, slipping quietly out of the penthouse while Ethan slept. The streets hummed softly with neon light, the occasional car horn, and the distant echo of footsteps. But to Allie, the world felt almost silent, as if holding its breath with her. Her heart pounded as she replayed the gala over and over. That look, that tilt of his smile. The way her soul had recognized him before her mind could even process it. It had to be Keen. But why hadn't he come to her? Why hadn't he found a way to bridge the impossible gap? The streets buzzed with neon signs and traffic, the air cool against her skin, but Ollie's focus was razor-sharp. She retraced the path from the gala, the ballroom, the streets, the shimmering reflections on wet pavement. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, only that she couldn't sleep until she did. And then she saw it. A flyer taped to the window of a small, unassuming bookstore, edges curled and faded from the sun and wind. Community Art Workshop, Instructor, Keen Morales. Her breath hitched. The letters swam before her eyes, uneven, not perfectly aligned. Her fingers trembled as she traced them. She remembered. Keen's dyslexia had always made his handwriting a little crooked, his letters sometimes slipping out of order. It was him. The next morning, she told Ethan she had an early rehearsal, but instead of the studio, she found herself standing in front of the bookstore. The smell of old paper and paint drifted through the cracked open door. Inside, laughter and voices mingled with the soft scrape of brushes on canvas and the occasional clink of water jars. Creativity in motion. And there he was. Older now, sharper around the edges, but still him. His hair was slightly longer, his jaw more defined, yet the softness in his eyes, the patience, the quiet warmth, remained unchanged. He guided a student's hand across a sketch, his voice gentle, grounding, and every word made her chest ache. For a moment, Allie couldn't move. She stood frozen in the doorway, the years of longing pressing down on her like a tangible weight. Every memory of him, every letter, every whispered dream from their past life, swirled around her. Then he looked up. Their eyes met. The brush slipped from his hand. "Allie," he whispered, disbelief etched across his face. Her heartbeat thundered. Words lodged in her throat, emotions clashing, relief, fear, longing, and 1,000 unspoken confessions. She stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. "Keen, it's me," she breathed, voice trembling but certain. He took a hesitant step closer, eyes scanning her face as if trying to imprint every feature, every familiar contour, into his memory. I can't believe it. You're really here. After everything." The room seemed to shrink, the noise fading into a soft hum, leaving just the two of them suspended in the moment. Years apart, fractured timelines, and impossible circumstances melted away under the intensity of recognition, the undeniable pull of hearts that had always belonged together. Allie swallowed, emotions threatening to spill over. "I never stopped looking for you." Keen's lips curved into the tiniest, shaky smile. "I knew you'd come back. Somehow. Somewhen. For a heartbeat, nothing else existed. The city, the fame, the fractured world. They didn't matter. There was only this. Them, finally in the same place. Even if only for a moment. Even if the world outside threatened to pull them apart again. Chapter 9. The Reunion. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. The clatter of brushes, the soft chatter of students, even the distant hum of the city beyond the windows, all of it faded into the background. There was only them, suspended in the fragile bubble of recognition, the weight of years pressing between them. Ollie's throat tightened. She wanted to run to him, to throw her arms around him like she used to when she was 19 and the world had seemed too heavy. But her legs refused to move, rooted to the spot. She wasn't the same girl anymore, and he wasn't the same boy. Time had carved them into different shapes, but the core, the connection, remained unmistakable. Keen. Her voice broke on his name, trembling like a fragile glass. He blinked, as though saying her name had pulled the ground from under him. Every careful step he took across the room seemed measured, hesitant, as if moving too fast would shatter this moment. You. He stopped a foot away, searching her face as though trying to imprint every line, every expression, in case she vanished like a dream. His hand twitched, caught between the urge to reach for her and the fear of breaking the fragile spell. You're here. After all this time. Her chest ached. I thought I'd lost you. I thought. He swallowed, jaw tightening, eyes clouded with memory and longing. I thought you chose a different life. That you walked away. The words struck her like stones. She shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. No, Keen. I didn't choose this. I don't even know how I got here. One night, I was in your apartment, remember? The sketches, the music, the little cafe down the street. And then, her voice faltered, caught on memories she could barely piece together. When I woke up, everything was gone. I was here, in this future. His brow furrowed, but his eyes softened. You're saying time. I don't know, Allie whispered. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, impossibly, he laughed quietly, shaking his head in disbelief, the sound almost breaking her heart with its mix of humor and pain. You always were impossible, he said, voice low and rough. Her lips curved despite the tears. And you were always patient enough to put up with me, she replied, voice catching on the words. This time, he didn't stop himself. He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek, tentative but deliberate. The warmth of his touch made her chest swell, memories of home, comfort, and endless afternoons washing over her. Allie leaned into him, closing her eyes. It felt like coming home. But the spell broke when a student cleared her throat in the corner, awkwardly packing her brushes. Keen stepped back, the flush rising in his cheeks betraying the longing he tried to mask. You shouldn't be here, he said softly, though every inch of him seemed to scream otherwise. Your life. It's not this anymore. You're a star, Allie. And me. He gestured at the paint-stained apron tied around his waist, the smell of linseed oil and charcoal clinging faintly to him. I stayed small. You're wrong, she whispered, voice trembling but fierce. You're everything I ever wanted. And I don't know how to fix this, but I know I can't just walk away. Silence stretched, fragile but charged, each second pulsing like a heartbeat between them. The studio smelled of paint, paper, and sunlight streaming through tall windows, yet all she noticed was him. Finally, he spoke, almost reluctantly. Meet me tomorrow. After class. We'll talk. Allie nodded, her heart pounding. Tomorrow felt both too far and dangerously close, a precipice she couldn't ignore. For the first time since waking up in this strange new life, amidst fame, chaos, and fractured timelines, she finally felt like she had found her way back. Chapter 10. The Girlfriend. The next day felt like an eternity. Allie went through the motions, smiling at cameras, posing for a brand shoot, nodding through interviews she couldn't remember. All the while, her chest burned with one thought: tomorrow, after class. But when she walked into the quiet art studio, her pulse leapt and then sank. Keen wasn't alone. A woman sat casually on the edge of one of the paint-splattered tables, swinging her legs as she laughed at something he had said. She wasn't striking in the way of models Allie had worked with. She had shoulder-length brown hair tucked behind her ears, simple jeans, and a soft sweater, the kind of girl you'd pass on the street and think, she looks nice. Ordinary, yet comfortably at home in Keen's world. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. Too familiar, too natural. Allie froze in the doorway. Every step she'd taken that morning suddenly meaningless. Keen noticed her first. His smile faltered, replaced with something unreadable. Allie. His voice caught, low and unsure. The woman turned, sizing Allie up in a single glance. Her smile was polite but guarded. So this is the famous Allie Bloom. I've seen you on billboards. Allie forced a polite nod, though her stomach twisted like a storm inside her. And you are? Claire, the woman said smoothly, sliding just a little closer to Keen. His girlfriend. The word hit like a shard of glass. Girlfriend. Ollie's gaze snapped to Keen, searching for denial, an explanation, anything. But he only looked. Ashamed. Guilty. His eyes softened as they met hers, as if to say it's not what you think, but no words came. Claire looped her arm through his, and Allie swore she saw Keen flinch, just barely, but enough to make her heart ache. Her throat was dry. I didn't realize you had someone. Claire smiled faintly, a subtle but deliberate mark of ownership. Well, he doesn't exactly broadcast me, but I've been around. For a while. She kissed his cheek lightly, almost like a quiet claim. Keen pulled away gently, an apologetic tremor in his movements. Claire, could you give us a minute? Claire's eyes flicked between them, suspicion flashing, but she only shrugged. Don't take too long. With a careful step backward, she slipped out of the studio, her footsteps fading down the hall like a metronome echoing Ollie's racing heartbeat. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ollie's voice shook. So, you moved on. Keen's jaw clenched. He didn't look away, though his eyes betrayed everything he didn't say. How about you? You have a husband, right? His tone wasn't cruel, but the weight of it pressed hard, bitter with unspoken pain. Ollie's chest tightened. That's not. She broke off, fumbling. Ethan isn't. It's complicated. Complicated. Keen's laugh was dry, humorless, carrying the sharp edge of restrained frustration. You're married, Allie. To him. And you're here, looking at me like. He stopped himself, dragging a hand through his hair. Like we're still us. Her eyes burned with guilt and longing. Because we are still us. I didn't choose this, Keen. One day I was in your apartment, and the next I woke up in a future I never asked for. He stared at her, torn between anger, disbelief, and undeniable longing. Then maybe the universe chose for you. Her breath caught. The words sliced deeper than he knew. Ollie's heart ached with the knowledge that fate, or time itself, had kept them apart, and now the complications of life had put even more obstacles in their path. The studio smelled faintly of paint and coffee, the soft hum of the city outside creeping in through cracked windows. She realized she could feel everything. The warmth of the room, the tension in his posture, the steady beat of her own heart that matched his in spite of the years and miles and fractured timelines. And for the first time, she understood just how much this, him, was worth fighting for. Chapter 11, Breaking Point. Ollie's breath caught, the sting of his words settling deep into her chest. The universe chose for you. Don't say that, she whispered, shaking her head. Don't you dare say that like I wanted this. Keen's eyes hardened, though beneath it she saw the ache, the raw fracture of years lost. What else am I supposed to think, Allie? You disappeared. Years went by. I waited. I hoped. I broke myself wondering if you'd come back, and then I see you on TV with him. Smiling. Perfect. Like I never existed. Her chest tightened, her pulse hammering. She stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint scent of paint, soap, and him, the smell that had always been home. I didn't leave you. I woke up in a different life. I don't know how, I don't know why, but every single day since, I've missed you. His laugh was bitter, raw, laced with pain. You've missed me? While living in mansions, walking red carpets, married to him. Don't reduce me to that, she snapped, fire flashing through her, hands trembling. Do you know how empty it feels? The crowds, the cameras, the lights, they don't mean anything when I can't share it with you. I was lost, Keen. I'm still lost. The rawness in her voice silenced him. For a moment, they only stared. Years of pain, love, and silence collapsing into this single fragile instant. The faint hum of the city outside the studio faded, the smell of turpentine and acrylics grounding them in this shared space that had always been theirs. Keen's hand twitched at his side. Then, with a sharp exhale, he stepped forward, fingers catching her wrist. The warmth of his touch sent sparks through her veins. "You can't say things like that, Allie. Not when you have a husband. Not when," his voice cracked, breaking like glass. "Not when I've tried so damn hard to move on." Her throat closed. "Have you?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Really?" His jaw worked. Silence stretched. "Claire. She's just," he faltered, eyes darting away, caught in the truth he hadn't said aloud. "She's not you." Ollie's hand rose almost without thought, brushing against his chest. She could feel the beat of his heart beneath her palm, a rhythm that matched her own rapid pulse. Keen caught her wrist again, holding it in place over the heartbeat she had memorized years ago. His forehead leaned toward hers, barely a breath between them, and the room seemed to shrink around their shared heat. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me we're not standing here, wanting the same damn thing after all these years." Her eyes blurred with tears. "I can't." The air between them burned. His lips hovered close enough to taste, the weight of a kiss hanging heavy, dangerous, inevitable, nearly tangible. But just before it could happen, Keen pulled back sharply, releasing her hand as if it had burned him. His chest heaved, voice ragged with restraint. "No, I can't. We can't do this." Allie stood frozen, every nerve alight with longing, the ache of the almost unbearable. Her fingers lingered in the space where his hand had been, wishing it had stayed. His voice dropped, rough, broken, and intimate. "You should go." She opened her mouth to argue, to beg, to stay, but nothing came out. With tears threatening to spill, she turned and walked out, each step heavier than the last, the studio's shadows stretching behind her like silent witnesses. And in the suffocating quiet of the space they had once shared, Keen pressed his palms to his face, muttering the words he hadn't been able to say aloud, the confession that would haunt him until time itself bent to fix what had been broken. "I never stopped loving you." Chapter 12, Fractures. The studio door slammed shut behind Allie, but the echo of her presence clung to the room like smoke. Keen dragged his hands down his face, cursing under his breath. His chest still hammered where her touch had been, her voice looping in his head. I can't. And yet every part of me wants her here." He kicked at the nearest stool, sending it crashing across the floor. The noise echoed, sharp and hollow, but it did nothing to drown out the fire she had left behind, the weight of years, of silence, of lost chances. The door creaked. "Keen." Claire's voice. He stiffened, scrubbing at his jaw. "Nothing. Just dropped something." Her eyes narrowed, sharp and knowing, scanning the chaos around them. "That was more than dropping something. Did she upset you?" He froze. "She." Not Allie, but she. Claire already knew the wound that no one could see. Claire stepped closer, her hand lightly brushing his arm. "Keen, I'm not blind." When she walked in, the way you looked at her. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Is she the reason you've never really let me in?" His throat tightened. The easy lie. Tell her she's enough. Tell her Allie means nothing anymore. Stuck in his mouth like broken glass. "Claire," he sighed, pulling his arm back. "You deserve more than someone half here." Her jaw trembled, but she forced a brittle smile. "So it's true." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You keep me around for nights you can't sleep, for when you need someone to warm your bed. But your heart? It's hers. Always hers." Keen flinched, guilt clawing at him like a living thing. "I never meant to. Don't." Claire shook her head, stepping back, her voice low but fierce. "Don't pretend you don't know. I'm not stupid, Keen. I thought maybe if I stayed, if I loved you enough, one day I'd matter more than a ghost. But she's not a ghost anymore, is she? She's here." Her words hung in the air, slicing through the quiet of the studio. Before he could respond, she turned and left, the door closing with a quiet finality, leaving only the faint echo of her footsteps. Keen sank onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. The smell of paint, the faint hum of the city outside, the scattered brushes, everything pressed in on him. For years, Allie had been a memory he couldn't touch, a phantom haunting his nights, his art, his very soul. Now, she was real. Every nerve, every cell in his body burned with the knowledge that she existed again. And every part of him ached because she wasn't his. Not yet. Not entirely. How do I even begin to get her back? He thought. Pain and longing twisting together. She's here, but the world, the universe, has her in another life. He leaned back, letting the silence of the studio press against him, wishing desperately that time could bend, wishing he could undo the years lost, wishing for a miracle. But for now, all he could do was sit and remember and wait, because she wasn't his. Not yet. Chapter 13. The distance at home. Allie barely remembered the drive back. The city lights blurred past her window, streaking like ribbons of gold and red, but all she could see was Keen's face. His eyes when he almost kissed her, the way his voice broke when he said, "I can't." Every detail of him burned into her mind, refusing to fade. By the time she walked through the door of her apartment, her chest was aching under the weight of it all. The polished marble floors, the muted gold accents, the faint hum of the city outside, all of it felt foreign, cold. Ethan was in the living room, scrolling through his tablet. He looked up when she entered, his sharp features softening into a smile. "There you are? Late shoot." Allie forced a nod, slipping out of her heels, the click of her nails on the floor echoing louder than she expected. Something like that. She expected him to press, but he didn't. That was Ethan, always polished, always composed, never demanding more than she gave. Sometimes, that made life easier. Tonight, it made it unbearable. "Dinner's in the fridge if you're hungry," he added, eyes drifting back to the screen. "I had the chef send over your favorite." "Thanks." Her voice was flat, hollow, like she was speaking through someone else. She padded into the kitchen, but her appetite was gone. She stood at the counter, staring at the glossy takeout container, her reflection warped in the polished marble. Her fingers traced the edge absent-mindedly, wishing she could trace Keen's face the same way. Ethan's voice carried faintly from the other room. "We have that charity gala this weekend. Don't forget." Gala. Interviews. Cameras. A perfect marriage in the spotlight. Everything she had once dreamed of, now a cage. But her mind was still in the paint-splattered studio. Still hearing Keen's laugh. Still feeling the ghost of his hand on her cheek. Still smelling the faint scent of acrylics and turpentine, mingled with his cologne. When she finally walked back into the living room, Ethan was watching her. His expression was mild, but there was something sharper in his gaze, something she'd overlooked before, like a faint tremor beneath calm water. "You've been distracted lately," he said carefully. "Is there something I should know?" Her heart lurched. For a second, panic seized her throat. Did he know? Could he see Keen's name written all over her skin, etched in invisible ink that only her heart could read? She forced a smile, brittle and practiced. "Just tired. Work's been a lot." Ethan studied her longer than usual, his eyes searching, unreadable. Then he nodded slowly, setting his tablet aside. "If you need a break, Allie, take one. The world can wait. But I can't have you slipping." Slipping. The word clung to her like a warning, a whisper of the truth she couldn't say aloud. "I'm already gone, even if I'm standing here." That night, lying beside him in their impossibly large bed, Allie stared at the ceiling while Ethan's steady breathing filled the silence. The cold sheets felt like a barrier, separating her from something, or someone, she couldn't reach. She turned away, clutching the pillow, fighting the ache in her chest. Because no matter how hard she tried to stay here, in this life, with this husband, her heart kept pulling her back to a paint-stained studio, to a boy who had never stopped being home. And as she drifted into restless sleep, she realized, home wasn't a place. It wasn't gold floors or chandeliers or soft beds. Home was Keen. Chapter 14. The Pull. Morning came too fast. Allie barely slept, her mind circling the same forbidden loop. Keen's eyes, the heat of his hand, the unfinished kiss that haunted her lips. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the brush of his fingers against her skin, the way his gaze had searched hers, and her chest ached with a longing she couldn't name. She dressed slowly, choosing a simple blouse and jeans instead of her usual carefully curated designer looks. She told herself it was for comfort, but deep down she knew why. She wanted to look like herself, not Allie Bloom the superstar. Just Allie, the girl Keen once knew. The one he had laughed with, argued with, and loved, before time had pulled them apart. Her phone buzzed incessantly with Ethan's messages, reminders about fittings, schedules, even a dinner with investors. She ignored them all. Each ping was like a tether, pulling her back into a life she didn't fully belong to anymore. She didn't want to answer. She didn't want to think about it. Her car carried her on autopilot, not toward a studio or a set, but back to the quiet corner of the city she wasn't supposed to return to. The streets were familiar yet foreign, the graffiti and chipped bricks whispering memories she had almost forgotten. Her heart thudded in her chest, a rhythm in sync with the pulse of the city, urging her forward. The art center loomed ahead, its brick walls weathered but steady, like a promise that some things endured. Ollie's steps faltered at the entrance for a heartbeat, and she caught herself holding her breath as she pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of turpentine and paint, comforting and sharp at the same time. When she reached the studio, she stopped short. Keen was there, alone this time. Paint streaked his forearm, his shirt spattered with color, as he leaned over a canvas. He was humming, low, steady, completely lost in his world. The light from the large windows caught his hair just right, highlighting strands she remembered brushing against his forehead years ago. For a moment, Allie just watched. She could have stood there forever, letting the sight of him stitch something inside her that had been broken for years. Every missed moment, every lost year, every tear she hadn't shed in the night, all of it seemed to converge here, in this quiet studio, in the presence of the man she had never stopped loving. Then he looked up. Their eyes locked, and silence filled the space between them, thick and suffocating yet charged with unspoken desire. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if their presence alone had drawn the walls in closer. Allie. His voice was rough, as if saying her name still hurt him, and reverberated somewhere deep in her chest. She stepped inside slowly, shutting the door behind her with a soft click. I wasn't sure if you'd let me come back. His jaw flexed, a tension she recognized from years of stubbornness and care. I shouldn't. But you didn't stop me. Her voice was soft, yet steady. It carried something older, something that time could never erase. The air crackled, heavy with everything unsaid. Keen set his brush down, wiping his hands on a rag that was already stained beyond saving. He took a step toward her, then another, until the space between them was dangerous again, breathable yet electric, intimate yet forbidden. I told myself last night I wouldn't see you again, he admitted, his voice tight, a low rumble that matched the tension in his shoulders. That if I had any sense, I'd stay away. Then why are you here? She whispered, her own chest tightening. His eyes burned into hers, impossible to look away from. Because I can't not be. Her breath caught. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, that no matter how many red carpets or magazine covers she had, nothing compared to standing here in front of him, feeling the heat of his presence, the steady pull of the man she had loved since she could remember. But before she could speak, he asked, his voice softer now, almost afraid. Does he know? Her stomach twisted. Ethan? No. Keen nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then we're both liars. The words stung because they were true. Each lie hung between them, an invisible chain heavier than any brushstroke or spotlight. Still, when his hand lifted as if to touch her again, Allie didn't move away. She wanted to feel the brush of his fingers, to anchor herself in the one place that had always felt like home. This time, neither of them did. They stood there, the space between them a fragile line, each heartbeat a drum of shared longing, shared regret, shared everything they couldn't say aloud. The world outside the studio might have been vast, gleaming, and full of obligations, but here, in this quiet, paint-stained room, there was only them. Only Allie. Only Keen. And the pull that refused to let go. Chapter 15. The Kiss. Keen's hand hovered just inches from her cheek, a fragile, trembling promise suspended in the air. Ollie's heart pounded so hard she thought it might crack her ribs, every beat echoing like a drum of longing she could no longer ignore. She should step back. She should remind herself, that she was married, that he had Claire, that what they were doing was dangerous, wrong, impossible. But the truth was, the moment he said her name yesterday, her world had already shifted. Everything familiar, everything safe, had been swept away by the pull she could no longer resist. Keen. Her voice trembled, soft and fragile. We can't. His jaw tightened, muscles taut under the skin, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. Then tell me to stop. The words hung between them like a challenge, a dare neither of them wanted to take seriously. Allie opened her mouth, but no words came out. She needed, him too much to stop. She could feel it in the tremor of her hands, the hitch of her breath, the way her chest ached with every heartbeat. Then, like lightning splitting the sky, the air between them broke. His hand slid to the back of her neck, strong and sure, pulling her toward him, closing the infinitesimal space that had held them apart for years. Their lips met, and it wasn't gentle. It was all the years of silence, of missed chances, of nights spent wishing and wondering, of love unspoken but never forgotten. His mouth was warm, desperate, searching, like trying to find a part of her that had always belonged to him. When she kissed him back, it felt as if time itself folded in half, collapsing 19-year-old Allie and 25-year-old Keen into a single, perfect present. She gripped his shirt, clutching him like if she let go, he'd vanish all over again. The edge of the table pressed into her back, paint jars rattling with the subtle chaos of their collision. Yet none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except this, him, her, the fire between them. Then, slowly, the kiss softened. His lips lingered on hers, gentle now, like a question, like an apology, like the whispered promise of all the moments they had lost. Her fingers traced the lines of his jaw, memorizing the curve of a face she thought she'd only ever seen in dreams. When he pulled back, they were both breathless, chests heaving, foreheads resting together, eyes closed, as if the world outside the studio had ceased to exist. I've dreamed of this, he whispered, voice low, rough with longing. Every damn day. A tear slipped down Ollie's cheek, tracing a path she hadn't realized had been waiting to flow. Me too, she admitted, voice breaking. But then reality crashed in like an unforgiving wave. Her ring burned against her skin, heavy with guilt, a cruel reminder of the life she was supposed to inhabit. She pulled back, shaking her head, breaking the fragile spell. We shouldn't have, she whispered, the words tasting like ash. Allie. His voice was raw, pleading, almost desperate. Don't say it meant nothing. Her chest tightened painfully. It meant everything. That's the problem. Silence fell like a curtain, thick and suffocating. They stood there, torn apart by the very thing that bound them together, hearts echoing the same forbidden rhythm. Finally, Keen stepped back, running a hand through his hair, paint streaking his temple like war paint of their love and war with reality. Go, he said softly, his voice carrying both command and surrender. Before we make it worse. Her body screamed to stay, to collapse into his arms and erase every wrong she'd ever lived through. But her legs carried her out the door, each step heavier than the last, her heart shattering piece by piece with every distance they put between them. Outside, the city noise returned, harsh and mocking, neon lights glaring and indifferent. Allie pressed her hand to her chest, where his kiss still lingered like fire, a flame she couldn't extinguish. For the first time, she realized something undeniable. No matter how far she'd traveled in time, no matter who she was supposed to be, or what life she was supposed to live, her heart had never left him. And now, it never would. Chapter 16. Cracks in the Glass. That night, Allie lay awake in the sprawling penthouse bed, her body turned away from Ethan. The city lights filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting stripes of neon across the polished marble. She could still feel Keen's lips on hers, a phantom heat that refused to fade. Every brush of memory made her pulse spike, her breath hitch, her heart ache with a longing she couldn't name. Ethan stirred beside her, stretching slightly, the faint scent of his cologne brushing against her skin. You're quiet tonight, he murmured, his voice low and careful, the kind of voice that had always comforted her once, but now felt suffocating. She forced a small laugh, brittle and hollow. Just tired. The shoot ran late. He shifted closer, draping an arm over her waist. The movement was meant to soothe, to claim intimacy. To anyone else, It might have felt comforting. To Allie, it was a cage. A reminder of who she was supposed to be and who she truly wanted to be with. You know you can talk to me, right? Ethan whispered, eyes still half closed, his voice soft, almost dreamy. About anything. Her throat tightened. Not this. Never this. I know, she whispered, voice barely audible. But her heart screamed a different truth, a truth that refused to bend to propriety or expectation. She imagined Keen's hands, warm and patient, the curve of his smile, the quiet strength of his presence, and felt the crushing distance between her reality and her desire. Meanwhile, across the city, Keen sat slumped in his studio chair, staring at the paint-splattered floor. The studio smelled faintly of turpentine and old wood, comforting in its familiarity. His lips still tingled from Ollie's kiss, a burning reminder of the line he hadn't crossed, and yet could not forget. He wanted to savor that moment, hold it in his chest like a talisman. But guilt pressed down like a storm cloud, heavy and relentless. The creak of the door pulled him from his haze. Claire stepped inside, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee, the rich aroma filling the room. "You've been quiet lately," she said, setting one down, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp, scanning him with a precision that made him tense. Keen forced a smile, turning his attention to the cup in front of him. "Just work. You know how it is." "Do I?" She tilted her head, crossing her arms, voice tightening with suspicion. "Because when you look at me now, it feels like you're looking through me." He swallowed hard. The words stuck in his throat. "Claire," her eyes flashed, the hurt and anger mingling in a dangerous cocktail. "It's her, isn't it?" Keen froze, guilt twisting in his chest. "I saw the way you looked at her, Keen." Claire pressed, voice trembling between fury and heartbreak. "Like I'm just temporary. A placeholder until someone better comes along." His chest tightened painfully. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to reassure her, to convince her she mattered. But the truth was carved into the lines of his face, into the silence he couldn't break. Claire let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "God, I knew it. I always knew. I just hoped I was wrong." "Claire, save it." Her voice sharpened, cutting through the fog of his guilt. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, yet her stance was defiant. "I hope she's worth it." She stormed out, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot in the studio. Keen buried his face in his hands, his body trembling, not from weakness, but from the fire she had ignited in him, the fire he could not, and would not, put out. He hated himself for hurting Claire, for failing to protect her heart. But the worst part, the truth he could not deny, was this: Allie was worth it. Every risk, every lie, every heartache. And in that instant, he realized the kiss had done more than ignite a spark. It had set a wildfire in motion, one that threatened both their carefully built lives. Every glance, every memory, every longing pulse of their hearts was now a crack in the glass of their worlds, fragile, irreparable, yet impossibly beautiful. Allie and Keen's lives were starting to burn, and there was no extinguishing it. Chapter 17, Fault Lines. The morning sunlight poured into the penthouse, but Allie felt nothing warm about it. It slanted across the floor in golden stripes, gleaming off the marble counters, casting shadows that stretched like fingers across the room. Ethan was already up, moving through the kitchen with the same precise, calm rhythm he always had. But today, every motion felt sharper, measured, as if he sensed the instability in her that she hadn't even admitted to herself. "Morning," he said, handing her a mug of coffee. His smile was polished, polite, the kind of smile that belonged in magazine spreads and interviews. But his eyes, they were too sharp, too observant, tracking her like he could see right through the cracks she was trying to hide. "Morning," she murmured, wrapping her fingers around the warm mug. She tried to draw comfort from it, but the coffee burned her tongue and offered no solace. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, the lines of his body rigid and commanding. "You've been distracted." Her chest tightened. The word felt like a weight pressing down on her ribs. She forced a sip of coffee, hoping the bitterness might anchor her, but it did little. "Just tired. Work's been overwhelming," she murmured, voice small. He tilted his head, the hint of a frown softening into concern. "It's not just work, Allie. You forget. I know you. I can see when something's off. Her throat closed. Do you? Do you really know me anymore? She wanted to tell him the truth, but the words seemed to curl away before they could form. She set the mug down, fingers trembling slightly, and said quietly, I just need space to breathe, Ethan. Space. His voice sharpened, though he tried to mask it. From what? From me? Silence stretched, thick and suffocating, between them. Allie wanted to say no, to reassure him, to make him believe in the life they'd built, but the truth pressed too heavily on her tongue. She couldn't say it without admitting that her heart was elsewhere, that every thought, every heartbeat, was with Keen. When she didn't answer, Ethan's jaw tightened. He pushed away from the counter, pacing a few steps, his polished shoes clicking on the marble. You know, for years I've supported everything. Your career, your dreams, the insane schedules. But lately, his eyes darkened, the smile dropping away. Lately it feels like you're already halfway out the door. Allie blinked back tears, her lips pressed tight. She said nothing, because any response would shatter the fragile mask she'd been wearing for weeks. Across town, Keen sat slumped in his studio, paintbrush idle between his fingers. The smell of oil paint and turpentine filled the air, usually comforting, but today it felt suffocating, like the studio itself was reminding him of everything he'd lost. Claire's absence lingered like a ghost in the room, the faint scent of her perfume haunting the corners. He tried to paint, to lose himself in the rhythm of color and canvas, but every line came out wrong. Every stroke reminded him of Allie, the curve of her smile, the fire in her eyes, the weight of the kiss that still burned across his lips. He dropped the brush, dragging both hands through his hair, a low growl escaping his throat. What the hell are you doing, Keen? He muttered to himself, staring at the empty canvas like it held the answers he couldn't reach. Deep down, he already knew the truth. He was in love with Allie Bloom. Still. Always. And no amount of paint, no excuse, no careful life he'd built could erase it. The ground beneath both of them was cracking, fault lines splitting wider with every secret glance, every stolen thought, every heartbeat shared in silence. The tension was a living thing, stretching, twisting, waiting, and sooner or later, something, or someone, was going to fall through. Chapter 18, The Secret Meeting. The rain fell in soft sheets against the city, drumming a steady rhythm on the cafe's awning and blurring the neon signs into watery streaks of color. Allie pulled her hood lower, her fingers clutching the fabric as she slipped through the side entrance, hoping the shadows themselves would shield her. Every step felt like trespassing into a world she wasn't supposed to inhabit. Keen was already there, as though he'd known exactly when she would arrive. He sat in the corner, a chipped ceramic mug clutched in his hands, eyes locked on the door the second she appeared. The warm lamplight caught the faint creases at the corners of his eyes, lines she'd memorized years ago, and made his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the patter of rain outside and the faint hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence. Hearts beat too fast, yet words felt impossible. You came, he said finally, voice low, rough with something unspoken. She slid into the seat across from him, careful to place her hands on the tabletop, not in his reach. I shouldn't have, she whispered, the sound fragile, almost a confession. I know, he admitted, a faint, pained smile tugging at his lips. But you did. The cafe was dim, nearly empty, but it felt too exposed, too fragile. Every glance they exchanged felt like an electric shock, every breath a risk. Keen, she struggled to steady her voice. We can't keep doing this. I'm married. His jaw clenched, tension rippling through his shoulders. I know. And you? She swallowed hard, heart hammering. You have Claire. Something flickered in his eyes, regret, frustration, longing all tangled together. Claire was never. Allie, she's not. He broke off, dragging a hand across his face. It doesn't matter. Because you're right. We shouldn't. The words should have brought relief. Instead, silence pressed down on them, thick and suffocating, like the weight of years compressed into a single, fragile cafe corner. Then Allie whispered, almost against her will, but I can't stop thinking about you. The crack in Keen's resolve was immediate. His hand shot across the table, warm and steady, covering hers. Dangerous. Magnetic. The heat of his touch made her pulse spike. Allie. His voice was raw, trembling just enough to betray the restraint he'd forced for years. I never stopped waiting for you. Her heart faltered, a single faltering beat that seemed louder than the rain outside. Before she could stop herself, before she could think about Ethan, about Claire, about the lives they were fracturing with every glance, she leaned forward. Their lips met, soft at first, testing, then desperate, urgent, collapsing years of silence, of what-ifs, into a single, searing kiss. It was a kiss that carried all the lost nights, the stolen glances, the dreams that had been tucked away in memory. Her hands pressed against his chest, feeling the steady, dangerous beat of his heart, as though holding onto him might tether her own. When they pulled apart, breathless, the cafe was silent except for the rain, now pounding like the echo of their longing. We're playing with fire, Allie whispered, voice trembling. Keen's eyes burned into hers, dark and molten, unyielding. Then let it burn. And in that moment, neither could resist the pull, the gravity that had drawn them together across time and impossible circumstances. The world outside the cafe, the lights, the rain, the life they were supposed to be living, faded into nothing. There was only this, only the heat between them, only the spark that refused to die. Chapter 19, The Watch. The rain hadn't stopped by the time Allie returned home. She leaned against the door once it shut, letting the weight of the day sink into her, her lips still tingling from Keen's kiss, her heart pounding like she'd sprinted through 1,000 lives. Outside, puddles rippled with every drop, the streetlights reflecting fractured patterns on the asphalt, mirroring the turmoil in her chest. Ethan wasn't there, thank God. His absence gave her silence, but not peace. Her chest burned with guilt, with longing, with questions that twisted tighter with every heartbeat. She wandered to her vanity, brushing her damp hair absently, trying to focus on something tangible, something solid. And then, her eyes caught a glint of brass. The pocket watch. Her pulse stalled. It had been years since she'd last seen it. She thought it had disappeared the night the night everything changed. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it, running her thumb across the cracked glass face, the unmoving hands frozen at 11:14. Her birthday. Suddenly, like a floodgate breaking, memories surged. The night in Keen's apartment. The rain tapping at the window. Her fight with her mother. The sting of feeling unwanted, unseen. Keen asleep on the couch, sketches scattered like fragments of forgotten dreams. And Allie, holding the watch, whispering into the dark, I wish I could skip ahead. I wish I could already be who I dreamed of being. I wish. I didn't have to wait anymore. The tick. The flash. The collapse into nothingness. Her hand shook as she pressed the watch to her chest. Oh my God, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I did this. I wish this. The fame. The accolades. The lights. The world she had thought she wanted. But in her selfish wish, she hadn't thought about what she might lose. And the universe had answered, giving her everything. Except Keen. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, haunted. The lines of her face felt sharper, the eyes staring back at her wide and searching. She pressed the watch closer, as if holding it against her heart might anchor something that had drifted away. I didn't want this without him, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I never wanted it without you, Keen. The silence of the apartment felt alive. Heavy. Waiting. Even the rain seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Her fingers clenched the watch, knuckles white against the cool brass. She inhaled deeply, letting the stillness fill her lungs, and then she spoke aloud, words firm, deliberate, unstoppable. I want this life. The dream, the music, the lights. But this time, with Keen by my side. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Just the soft patter of rain against the window, the quiet hum of the city outside. Then tick. Her breath caught. The hands of the watch twitched. Once. Twice. Slowly, impossibly, the crack in the glass began to fade, sealing like a wound. The second hand ticked forward for the first time in years, cutting through the silence with a quiet, defiant pulse. Allie staggered back, staring. The air felt different. Charged, electric. Not the violent tearing of timelines like before, but something gentler, more deliberate. Something that whispered possibility, that hinted at a bending, a reshaping. The wish was alive. But what it would change, what it would cost, Allie didn't know yet. And as she stood there, gripping the watch, she realized one thing with crystal clarity. The world had been waiting for her to decide. And now, there was no turning back. Chapter 20. The Truth Between Them. The cafe had been reckless. The kiss had been fire and danger, an explosion they'd both been waiting for, but this secret in her hand was worse. Allie stared at the pocket watch as if it could burn her, yet she couldn't let it go. Its brass felt heavier than before, as though the weight of years and choices had finally settled into her palm. By morning, the decision was made. She couldn't keep it to herself anymore. Keen deserved to know, even if he thought she was crazy, even if he walked away forever. Her thumbs hovered over the phone for a long time before she finally typed, "Meet me. Somewhere no one knows us." He responded almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting with the phone in his hand. The pier. Midnight. Allie stared at the screen until it dimmed, her heart hammering against her ribs. The pier smelled of salt and secrets. The sea air was sharp, carrying mist that clung to her hair and jacket. Wooden planks creaked beneath her boots as she walked, their slickness making each step deliberate. The world was asleep, save for the hiss of the waves and the far-off hum of the city, a steady pulse of neon in the distance. Keen was already there, leaning against a weather-worn post, hood pulled low, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked like a ghost from her past, yet solid and present, the same boy she'd once loved and the man she couldn't stop thinking about. His eyes lit up when he saw her, but behind the spark there was weight, years of unanswered questions, nights spent wondering. "You came," he murmured, his voice low, almost a sigh. "I had to." Ollie's voice trembled, her fingers tightening around the watch. She stepped closer, the sound of the water slapping against the pier echoing around them. "Keen, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I've lost my mind." His brow furrowed. "Allie, no, listen." She held up the pocket watch between them, the brass catching the dim glow of a single flickering pier lamp. "Do you remember that night? When we were younger, before everything. The night I disappeared?" Keen's jaw clenched. His hands came out of his pockets, fists curling at his sides. His voice was quiet, but raw. "I thought about that night every day. You were just gone. No call, no note. Nothing. Allie, you broke me." Her throat closed, tears pricking her eyes. "I didn't leave you. Not the way you think. She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I made a wish. On this." She pressed the watch into his hands, her palms shaking. Keen blinked, confused, glancing down at the object. "A wish. I know how it sounds. But it's true. That night, I wanted everything too fast. I wanted to be who I dreamed of being without waiting. And then, I woke up in this life. Years ahead. Famous. Successful." Her breath hitched, the confession spilling out in a rush. "But you weren't there. You were never there." He stared at her, disbelief flickering with something deeper, recognition, maybe, or a buried hope he'd never let himself feel again. His thumb traced the edge of the watch. "You're telling me you time traveled?" "Yes," she whispered. "By accident. And I thought I wanted it. But Keen, I didn't want any of it without you." Silence stretched between them, the waves slapping the shore like a heartbeat. Keen shook his head slowly, as if the world had tilted beneath his feet. "You expect me to believe," the watch ticked. Loud. Sharp. Both of them froze. Keen's eyes widened, his grip tightening as the second hand twitched forward. It moved." Allie nodded, tears spilling freely now. "Because I made another wish. Tonight. I wished for this life, but with you this time." The words trembled in the salty air, fragile and irreversible. Keen stared at her like she'd ripped his entire world open again. But this time, he wasn't angry. His chest rose and fell hard, his eyes burning with something he hadn't dared feel in years. "Allie." His voice cracked, hoarse. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" She stepped closer, placing her hand over his, the watch caught between their palms. "Yes, I've finally done the right thing." A shiver ran through the air, a hum like a low chord under the sound of the ocean. Keen looked past her at the dark horizon, then back at her face, searching. "If this changes everything." He swallowed hard. "If it changes me." Her fingers tightened around his. "Then we'll face it. Together." The wind whipped at their clothes, carrying the scent of rain and salt, and something electric. Possibility, danger, fate. Keen lowered his eyes to the watch and then to her. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "Allie," he said softly, as though testing her name in this new world they'd just begun to shape. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like a ghost of who she'd been. She felt like someone about to step into a future she hadn't dared to imagine, one she was choosing. Chapter 21, Shifting Edges. A lump rose in her throat. She didn't answer, because in that moment, she noticed something impossible. The ring on her finger, Ethan's wedding band, flickered like a bad signal. For a fraction of a second, it disappeared entirely, leaving her finger bare, and then reappeared, slightly blurred, as though reality itself was unsure what belonged there. Allie gasped, clutching her hand in front of her face, the brass of the watch cold and heavy in her other palm. "Keen." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, trembling with fear and wonder. It's rewriting my life." Keen's eyes widened, disbelief and awe battling in his gaze. He stepped closer, as if proximity could anchor them both in the shifting world. No way. It can't. This isn't possible." His voice dropped, almost reverent, as though saying it aloud might shatter everything. The rain fell harder, drumming against the pier like a warning, each drop echoing in their ears. The fog rolling in from the harbor twisted around them, tendrils curling through the lamplight. The air itself felt charged, humming with something ancient and alive, pressing against their skin like an invisible tide. Ollie's chest tightened. She felt it deep in her bones, a vibration that wasn't just in the watch, but in the world around her. Something was moving, shifting, bending. Something that had been locked in place for years was loosening. "It's not just the ring," she breathed, staring down at her hand as if it held the key to the universe. "Everything feels different. The air, the sounds, even the rain. It's like reality itself is listening, responding." The watch throbbed in Keen's hand, each tick louder than the last, echoing in their chests. The brass seemed to glow faintly, reflecting not the city, not the pier, not the rain, but some other place, some other time, alive and waiting. Keen's jaw tightened. His voice was raw, roughened by disbelief and fear. "If this is what you wished for, if it's really rewriting everything, do you even know what it could cost? Who? Or what you could lose?" Ollie's eyes met his, burning with desperation and certainty. "I know," she whispered. "I've lived without you. I've had everything I thought I wanted. And it meant nothing. Not without you." The watch ticked faster, a rapid, insistent heartbeat now, vibrating through their hands, their bodies, the pier beneath them. The city lights shimmered strangely, as though caught between two worlds. Shadows stretched and twisted in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The smell of salt and wetwood sharpened around them. Keen swallowed, his fingers tightening around hers as if holding on could keep this fragile moment from unraveling. "Allie, are you sure? There's no turning back once this starts." "I'm sure," she said, voice breaking but unwavering. "For us. For what we're meant to have. No regrets this time." A single tick from the watch sounded louder than the storm itself, and the world seemed to shiver. Somewhere deep in the rhythm, in the pulse of metal and magic and heart, Allie felt it. The impossible was happening. The world she'd known, the life she'd been forced into, was bending, reshaping. And for the first time in years, Keen was at her side as it began. The air between them felt alive, humming, waiting, holding its breath for the first tremors of a reality rewritten. Chapter 22, Fractures. Keen backed up a step, his knuckles white around the brass watch, holding it as though it might shatter or burn him. His voice was raw, almost frantic. "This isn't right, Allie. You can't just spend time to fix us. That's not love. That's rewriting reality." She shook her head quickly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "No. Keen, listen to me. This isn't me trying to erase anything. It's me trying to finally choose you. For once in my life, I get to choose." The air between them shimmered faintly, like heat rising off pavement. Keen's studio behind them, the brushes, the canvases, the half-finished mural, blurred at the edges. For a heartbeat, Allie saw something else overlay it. A sleek penthouse view, the glitter of a city skyline she knew all too well. Two lives, two timelines, overlapping like ghosts. Her pulse raced. "It's already happening," she whispered. Keen's face twisted, a mix of awe and fear. "And what if it destroys everything else? What about the students I teach?" "Claire." He stopped himself, almost choking on her name. "Your husband." Her wedding ring flickered again. This time it stayed gone for several seconds before reappearing, a cruel, pulsing glitch in reality. Allie felt her stomach drop. "I never loved him the way I loved you," she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. "Don't you get it? None of it matters without you." For a moment, Keen's defenses cracked. His hand hovered in the air, like he might reach for her, pull her into him, say yes. But instead, he dropped it, the muscles in his jaw working hard. The watch ticked faster, louder, like a heartbeat between them. "Allie." His voice broke. "I wanted you. I waited for you. But if this is the price, if you erase lives just to be with me, then maybe we were never meant to survive outside of what we had." The words gutted her. The ground shifted again. The rain outside the studio window stuttered and froze mid-fall, drops suspended in the air like diamonds. People on the street blurred, their voices stretching into muffled echoes. Time itself seemed to stall, holding its breath. Ollie's breath trembled. The watch in Keen's hand vibrated now, ticking faster and faster, its glow faintly golden through the brass cracks. "Keen," she whispered, eyes locked on his. "If you don't want this, tell me now. Because if I wish again, there's no turning back." He stared at her, torn between terror and the ache of still loving her after all these years. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words coming. And in the frozen silence of a world waiting for an answer, Allie Bloom closed her eyes. Her fingers curled, her lips forming the words of a wish. Chapter 23, The New Morning. A rush of light engulfed her. Not the blinding kind of studio spotlights, not the warm glow of stage bulbs, but something purer, humming with power that vibrated through her bones. Allie gasped. Her fingers tightened around empty air. The watch was gone. And so was the cafe. The salty tang of the pier, the city lights, the rain. It all vanished like a dream slipping through her fingers. Instead, she woke to the soft croon of jazz, mellow and familiar, curling through the room. The smell of fresh coffee drifted in from somewhere nearby, warm and inviting. Her body sank into sheets that were plush, soft, and completely unknown. Her eyes flew open. This wasn't her penthouse with Ethan. It wasn't sterile, modern, cold. Instead, sunlight filtered through half-drawn curtains into a bedroom painted in muted tones, soft blues, warm wood, the faint smell of paint and turpentine lingering. Canvases leaned against the walls, some finished, others waiting. A dresser cluttered with coffee mugs, brushes, and scattered pencils stood crooked in the corner, as if time had paused while someone had stepped away for a moment. And next to her, still asleep, lay Keen. Her chest tightened. His hair was a little messier than she remembered, his jaw shadowed with stubble, but his face. It was the same. Familiar. Home. Allie sat up slowly, holding her breath, heart pounding like it would break through her ribcage. She lifted her left hand. Her ringed finger was bare. No trace of Ethan. No trace of the life she had been forced into. Her wish had worked. Keen stirred beside her, letting out a groggy sigh before opening his eyes. When he saw her, he smiled in that quiet, sleepy way that made her chest ache. "Morning," he murmured. She almost cried at the sound. "Morning," she whispered back, voice breaking, tremulous with disbelief and relief. For a moment, it felt perfect. Simple. Ordinary. The way she had dreamed it might feel. Just them, a room, sunlight through curtains, the faint smell of coffee and paint. No fame, no cameras, no impossible choices. But then, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Allie frowned, picking it up. The lock screen was a mosaic of notifications, red and screaming, impossible to ignore. Allie Bloom spotted leaving a cafe with Mystery Man. Exclusive, Trouble in Paradise for Ethan and Allie. Who is Keen Morales? Paparazzi photos. Grainy, chaotic, but clear enough. She froze. Her stomach pitched, while rising. Keen sat up sharply beside her, brow furrowed as he saw the screen. What's that? Her fingers shook as she scrolled, each headline stabbing through the fragile calm of their morning. Her heart hammered, her chest tight, the perfect, quiet sunrise now tainted with reality. Her wish had worked, but it hadn't erased the world she had left behind. It was bleeding through, twisted, dangerous. Her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Keen, I don't think we're safe." He looked at her, eyes wide and dark, calculating the impossible. "The world. It knows us," he muttered. "It's not just the life you wished for. It's our lives, colliding with yours. With them." Allie swallowed hard, trying to steady herself, but panic curled tight around her chest. "We have to figure this out. Now. Before everyone, decides what we are." Keen's hand reached for hers, steadying her. His touch burned like fire through her veins. "Then we face it," he said, jaw set. "Together. No more running." The jazz continued to play softly, oblivious to the chaos about to unfold. And for the first time, Allie realized that wishes might give you the life you wanted, but they could never erase the world you came from. Chapter 24. Cracks in the Wish. Keen took the phone from her gently, scanning the headlines. His jaw tightened, his fingers curling around the device like he wanted to crush it. "They already know," he muttered, voice low and harsh. "Whoever this Ethan is in your other life, he's not going to let this go quietly." Allie buried her face in her hands, the weight of every choice she'd made crashing down. I thought wishing would fix it, that I'd finally get to live this life, with you, without the mess." Her voice cracked, trembling under the burden. "But it's like the universe won't let me escape. It's like it's testing me again." Keen slid closer, brushing her damp hair from her face so she had no choice but to look at him. His eyes were steady, burning with quiet fire even as his pulse betrayed him. "Listen," he said, voice softer now, almost tender. "I don't care what the universe says. You're here now. With me. That's what matters. Right here, right now." Ollie's heart twisted at the words. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the fragile reality she'd built. But fear gnawed at her ribs, sharp and insistent. "What if it all unravels again?" she whispered, barely audible. "What if one day I wake up back in Ethan's bed? Or some other version of life I never asked for?" Keen's hand moved to her cheek, thumb brushing away the tear that slipped free. His gaze held hers, fierce and unwavering. "Then we fight for this one," he said, voice rough, steadying. "Together. I swear it." Allie leaned into him, clinging like he was the only real thing left in a storm of shifting timelines, every heartbeat a tether to reality. But the phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't just gossip sites or curious headlines. The vibration felt heavy, like a drumbeat of warning against the fragile peace of the room. A message from an unknown number. "You can't rewrite fate, Allie. You belong to me." Her blood ran cold. Her fingers shook as she held the phone, the words searing themselves into her mind. Keen read it over her shoulder, the color draining from his face. His entire body tensed, rigid as a wire pulled taut. "Is that him?" he asked quietly, voice tight with barely restrained fury. She nodded slowly, shivering as if the air itself had turned icy. "Yes," she breathed. Keen's hand clenched into a fist, nails biting into his palm. "Then let him come. Because I'm not losing you again." Her pulse raced, torn between terror and a fierce, reckless spark of hope. She had gotten what she wished for. Almost. But if Ethan had found a way to bleed into this world, maybe the wish wasn't finished with her yet. And maybe, neither was fate. Chapter 25. The knock at the door. The apartment was too quiet. Too still. The hum of the city outside seemed distant, almost unreal compared to the storm of her thoughts. Allie paced the narrow stretch of carpet, phone clutched tight in her hand, eyes darting nervously to the lock screen. The messages still glared at her. "You can't rewrite fate, Allie. You belong to me." Keen stood near the kitchen counter, tense, shirt sleeves rolled up, pacing like a coiled spring. His jaw was tight, hands clenching and unclenching. "It's just a threat," he muttered, though the storm behind his eyes told her he didn't entirely believe it. "People do this all the time. Paparazzi. Online trolls. Ignore it." Allie shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. That's exactly how Ethan talks. Cold. Possessive. Like I'm a thing he owns. Not just someone he loved. Keen. Someone he controlled." Keen froze, finally meeting her gaze. His eyes darkened, stormy and protective. "Then he's not just bleeding into tabloids. He's here. Somehow. In this reality. In our lives. Allie swallowed hard, the weight of the truth pressing down. Before she could respond, 3 sharp raps echoed through the apartment door. Her blood ran cold. The sound was unmistakable, precise, controlled, familiar. Her knees threatened to buckle. Keen's hand shot out, gripping hers. "Stay back," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. His other hand rested near the counter, close enough to snatch up anything as a weapon. A 4th rap, louder this time, reverberated through the thin wood. A voice followed, muffled, but unmistakable. "Allie." Her heart stopped. It was Ethan. Keen's eyes narrowed, body coiled with protective energy, every muscle ready to move. "Do not open that door," he said sharply. "He's not here for a conversation." Ollie's hands shook around her phone, her chest tightening. The paparazzi flashes outside the window cast faint staccato lights across the walls. She could see it now. This life wasn't hidden. Her wish hadn't erased the past. It had bled into the present. The doorknob rattled, just slightly, and the threat in the air grew heavier. Allie whispered, almost pleading, "Keen, what do we do?" He leaned close, voice rough, eyes locked on hers. "We protect this. We protect us. No one gets between us. Not him, not the press, not fate itself." Another knock, firmer this time, and the doorknob twisted slowly. Ollie's pulse hammered. Every part of her screamed to run, to hide, but her hand instinctively reached for Keen's. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers threaded through hers, grounding her in the one certainty she had him. The door creaked. A shadow appeared in the hallway. Ethan's silhouette. Ollie's chest constricted. Keen's grip tightened, his knuckles white. "He thinks he can take you back?" he muttered, voice low and dangerous. "Let's make sure he never gets the chance." Allie swallowed, eyes flicking to him. She knew, in that moment, it wasn't just paparazzi or gossip. It was a war. Her old life and her new one, colliding. And for the first time since the wish, she realized, they would fight it together. Chapter 26. Collision. The door trembled under the pounding, each blow like a heartbeat trying to break through. Ollie's back hit the far wall before she even realized she'd moved. Keen planted himself between her and the entrance, shoulders squared, every line of his body coiled like a spring. "Open up." Ethan's voice thundered through the wood. Too calm to be casual. Too steady to be safe. "I know you're in there." Ollie's pulse hammered in her ears. "Keen, he won't stop." "Good," Keen muttered, his voice a low growl. "Then we end this now." The doorknob twisted violently. Crack. Wood splintered as Ethan's weight slammed against it. Allie stumbled back, clutching her phone like it could ward him off. The door burst inward with a splintering groan. And there he was. Ethan filled the frame like a shadow made flesh, immaculate suit, jaw locked, eyes blazing with an obsession that chilled her to the bone. The paparazzi flashes outside the window stuttered against his silhouette, capturing this intrusion like stolen glimpses of another world. He looked untouched by the chaos beyond the glass, like he'd dragged his own reality with him. "There you are." His gaze locked on Allie, ignoring Keen entirely. His voice was a velvet knife. "I told you. You belong to me." Keen moved before Allie could speak, stepping into Ethan's path. "No, she doesn't." For a moment, the two men stood inches apart, the air vibrating with tension. Ethan's smirk curved, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And who are you?" he asked softly, almost a hiss. "The replacement?" "The wish." A dark chuckle rippled from his chest. "Do you really think you can keep her from what she is?" Ollie's chest constricted, her hands trembling. "Ethan, stop. This isn't your world anymore." His eyes flicked to her then, hungry, possessive, burning like an old claim etched into his bones. "Every world is mine if you're in it." Keen's fists curled, knuckles whitening. "Touch her," he said, voice steady as steel, "and you won't leave this room." Ethan tilted his head, amused, eyes glinting with something unearthly. "You're brave. I'll give you that." His gaze slid past Keen, pinning Allie like a predator cornering prey. "But bravery won't stop her from being mine." Outside, the storm rose to a howl, wind rattling the glass in rhythm with the camera flashes. Nature and the media both pounding at their fragile world. Ollie's breath came shallow. She realized, with a cold shiver, that this wasn't just a confrontation. This was the breaking point of her wish. And someone wasn't going to walk away unscathed. Chapter 27. The Fracture. The air thickened, heavy and humming, as if reality itself were holding its breath. Ollie's pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the raw, strange energy wrapping around the room. Her fingers brushed Keen's hand instinctively. He squeezed hers, grounding her to the present. Ethan stepped forward, and the walls shimmered, edges flickering between her familiar apartment and a blur of unknown spaces. Another timeline, another life. The floor rippled beneath them like liquid glass. You can't hide. Ethan's voice reverberated unnaturally. You've crossed worlds. You're mine, Allie. Always. Allie felt a pull in her chest, tugging on the very essence of her being. Memories of her other life. Ethan, the penthouse, the stage smiles, flooded her mind, colliding with the warmth of Keen's hand and the soft sunlight of the apartment. She realized suddenly that it wasn't just her heart that had wished. It was the world itself bending to her desire. I don't belong to you, Allie whispered, her voice stronger than she felt. Not in any world. Not without choice. Ethan smirked, but it faltered as golden light began to shimmer around her. Choice, he sneered. You think your wish can undo what's already mine? The light pulsed faster, and for a moment, Ethan lunged, grabbing for her. Keen stepped forward, pulling her behind him. Allie, he shouted, straining against the force trying to pull them apart. Her heart pounded. The memories of the other timelines surged into her mind, chaotic and beautiful all at once. She let herself feel everything. The loss, the longing, the love she and Keen had carried through the years. She channeled it into a single pulse of golden light, wrapping around Ethan like chains of pure energy. But Ethan did not go quietly. He twisted, roaring, his hands clawing at the edges of the collapsing timelines, pulling shards of her past lives toward him. Allie staggered under the weight of memories not her own. Ethan's penthouse, staged smiles, applause from crowds she didn't even know, the quiet warmth of Keen's embrace in 1,000 possible mornings. Keen, I can't hold him. Allie gasped, her body trembling. Yes, you can. Keen shouted. I'm right here, focus on us. On this world, not his. Allie locked eyes with him. All the chaos faded into a single truth. She didn't need any other life, any other version of herself. She needed him. She needed now. With a scream that tore through the fractured air, Allie sent the pulse outward. The golden light coiled like a living thing, tightening around Ethan, pulling him toward a collapsing fragment of the timeline. He struggled, rage and fear etched on his face, clawing at the air. Memories, echoes, and whispers of all his attempts to control her recoiled against him. Keen, now, she cried. Together, their hands clasped, their wills united. The pulse snapped, and Ethan let out a final, strangled scream. Half human, half echo of another dimension, as he vanished. A gust of wind swept through the apartment, carrying with it the faint scent of his obsession. Silence fell. The storm outside cleared. Reality hummed softly, steadying itself like a heart slowly returning to rhythm. Allie sank to the floor, knees weak, chest heaving. He knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. You did it, he whispered, voice raw. You chose us. Allie leaned into him, letting herself cry, not for lost worlds, not for what might have been, but for the life she had finally claimed. The watch was gone, scattered to dust, and the fractured echoes of her other selves melted into the light of this moment. I wanted this life. But with you, she murmured, trembling. Keen pressed his forehead to hers, smile soft, weary, and full of relief. Then we make it ours. Every day, every moment. No one can take that from us. For a long while, they simply held each other, the quiet of the city settling around them like a promise. And for the first time in countless lifetimes, Allie knew this was real. This was home. Outside, sunlight glinted on the streets, ordinary and alive. And inside, Allie and Keen rose together, hand in hand, ready to face the future they had fought so hard to claim, finally free from the fractures of fate.